Tyranids. Today I'm going to be going over the Tyranid Codex. We got the Djokovic and Nadal final game in the background, so sorry about that. But Tyranids I'm recently building. I've built a number of different Tyranid armies over the years. And a couple things you need to know right off the bat about them. Number one, they never get an additional assault dice for having two-handed weapons. They already pretty much assume that they have two-handed weapons, so that's already included in the their profile or whatever. The second part is synapse, and that's any unit within 12 inches of synapse creature, and they specify that are kind of like the hive mind and all the little worker bees. And if you go outside of 12 inches, there certain things happen. They'll either lurk or feed, and based on that, they'll do different things like run and cower, or they'll just go crazy and attack the first thing, and they get a slight benefit with that. Those are the two main things. There is Shadow of the Warp, which just messes with Psychers, which they have to roll 3d6 on Psychers within 12 inches. And that comes, not very often does that come into effect, but probably would be good against Grey Knights trying to do an insta-kill against your monstrous creatures. So we're going to go on to the HQ next. Alright, the first HQ on the list is the Hive Tyrant. Everyone's heard of the flying Hive Tyrant with two twin-link devours. That's a great HQ. Actually, have him right here. He actually has twin-link devours on that I just kind of model it as. And then it comes bone stock without wings. You have to add it. And it gets pretty pricey. I think it's well over 200 points for having wings. But that's a good one to have. I won't take him walking across unless I add at least two Tyrant guard next to him, or it's like his bodyguards. They're toughness 6 little. I don't have the model. It's Tyrant guards are this guy without the gun, and they're strength 6. They're kind of the bodyguards of the Hive Tyrant to give him an extra 2 wounds each. So usually run them about maybe two Tyrant guards. I don't have any right now. I'll probably eventually get some. But anyways, going back to the Hive Tyrant, usually it's going to be flying with some sort of shooting or heavy close combat. Usually shooting. He's a good HQ, very expensive. He's a synapse, or she's a synapse creature and has Shadow of the Warp and also a Psyker. Good to run him on Biomancy, so you can get like Iron Arm or things that make it less likely for them to get killed. And anything that doesn't have Skyfire hits only on 6. And then you do a 1 or 2 grounding test. Roll 1 or 2 grounding tests to see if they fall out of the sky. Lately, I've been pretty lucky about fighting flying creatures and having them grounded, whether in the first or second turn. So, the Hive Tyrant has a variant, like a special character, the Swarm Lord. It's 280 points, nothing to upgrade, but you can add Tyrant Guard, which I highly suggest, because he is just walking across the board no matter what you do. And that's a big target. For 300 points, looking 340 points, 400 points with 2 Tyrant Guard. That gets pretty pricey, but it's an amazing... It's a synapse creature, and it has a whole bunch of extra supporting things, as well as Shadow of the Warp and even instant death weapons. The next HQ is a Turvagon. The Turvagon is most likely an auto-include, either 2 or more in an army of over 1,000 points, strictly because you get troops, free troops from them. I rarely run them as a HQ. I I usually run him with 10 Termagants to make him a troop choice, but we'll get to that later on. When I do play the Tervagon, I usually run, let's see, Crushing Claws. Crushing Claws gets them an additional D3 attacks, which is really handy when you do Smash, because if Smash on a monstrous creature is you half the attacks rounding up. So normal it would be on the charge, it would be 2 attacks. So you add another D3 so you could get up to 5 attacks, strength 10. Very helpful. Adrenal glands and toxic sacs to give counterattack and furious charge to your little guys that pop out. Now the special rule with the Tervagon is that you roll 3 dice. You don't have to do it every turn. So in the beginning, if you don't want to just have the group mowed down or don't want to get corked out early, you just wait. So you move them up. Beginning of your movement phase, you roll 3 dice, and that's how many Termagants come out of them, or her. And the only way it stops is if you roll doubles. So if you roll 6, 6, 5, then you're corked out, but yet you still get these 17 Termagants that come out. And the Termagants come out 6 inches from her, and then they get to move and assault and shoot just like normal. So you have like a 12-inch range that these Termagants can pop out. Pretty helpful. The Tyranids, you don't want to pay. You want to try not to pay for troops because they're so worthless. It's more of a swarm than anything. So Termagon, you have a troop choice that can hold an objective that's toughness 6 and 6 wounds, and you can do Biomancy on her for make him even stronger. So that's good. All right, next one is the Tyranid Prime. This is probably the cheaper for the lower point games, 80 points. Essentially, it's a warrior that has better ballistic skill and weapon skill. Actually, does it have? Yes, it does have better ballistic and weapon skill. And it can take a variety of things. I usually take Rending Claws for 5 points, 85. And then you can get Rending Claws for 5 points. Lash Whip, Bone Sword for 15. I wouldn't get too crazy with him. 85 points is cheap. The good news about a Tyranid Prime is that it's an independent character. So you can actually attach him to a group of, like a huge group of Termagants. Yeah, you could just, just bury that Synapse creature in a huge group of guys. Like most other armies, like a HQ for Space Marines or whoever, you can attach to a group and then you have more wounds before he dies. Most of the other Synapse creatures are independent, not independent characters, but separate squads. You can't really, you can target them specifically. So that's a huge advantage for the little Tyranid Prime. So what I would do is maybe take him as a secondary HQ choice and just bury him in that group that's moving up to the front lines. And he does Shadow the Warp too. So if you get close enough to that Psyker, you'll make it much more difficult to get perils. Then you get the Parasite of Mortrex, which I didn't use for a long time, only recently until this army. Here's a custom one. They don't make a model for it yet. I heard with the new version, the new Codex coming out soon, that they're going to come out with this. I really like this character. It's 160 points, a little pricey, but usually 160 points for an HQ is okay for larger games, like over 1,000. I like to include him in 1,000 points, strictly because there's not a lot of things that actually can wipe him off the board. Now what's unique about this character is that Number one, it's flying, so it moves 12 inches. It's a synapse creature, and it's Shadow of the Warp, just like the other ones. This one can actually... It has an instant death weapon. And it has a Reaper Swarm type of ability that any person that it kills in close combat or deep strikes, it needs to do a toughness test. And if it fails a toughness test, then I get D6 Reaper Swarms out of that body. So essentially when he wounds them, he infects them kind of like aliens, and then when he dies on the ground, those Reaper Swarms just kind of like burst out of him and just continue attacking. So in a low point game, you can generate a significant amount of wounds from 1, 2, maybe even 3 of this guy killing someone. I once did, I think it was somewhere around 16 to 18 Reaper Swarm bases against a Space Marine army. And all he could do, and the Parasite of Mortrex is in that group, so all he had to do is just keep mowing them free units of Reaper Swarms down until they got to the Parasite of Mortrex, which rarely ever happens. It's one of those creatures that you have to instant kill very quickly or just gun them down. And what I do to avoid being gunned down, which not a lot of people do, but since he's flying, I like to do a Reaper Swarm. Where is it? Oh, sorry. It's a Reaper Swarm with wings. It's called a Sky Slasher Swarm Brood, 15 points per base. The minimum you can take is 3. So you're taking 3 Reaper Swarm bases that can fly, that can stay with the group. Stay with the group of Parasite with Mortrex. Just as additional wounds so it doesn't get gunned down. Yes! So, Reaper Swarm, or the Parasite moving across the board, he has 3 wounds. And then an additional 3 Rippers, each having 3, so that's 9. So he's got 12 wounds going across the board. The only bad thing would be flame templates, blast templates, and high melta guns that would potentially take out the Rippers faster, but that's what they're there for. You're literally spending 45 points to protect your 160 points. So I like that one. That was the one. And only recently I saw it on Mini Wargaming and saw how badass that Reaper Swarm ability is. And also, every enemy unit that arrives using outflank ability or deep strike or outflank, the enemy movement phase. Okay, so let's say a group of scouts or something like that, it outflanks. One of them, the owner of the thing, chooses who, and if they fail the toughness test, D6 Reaper Swarms right on them as soon as they come in. That's pretty nice. And that'll pretty much... The group that outflanks was useless turn 1 because they have to stay in reserve. Turn 2, if it fails the toughness test, they're pretty much useless to turn 2 because they're going to be battling the free units that popped out of them. So that's great that you can actually take out two turns of a unit of whatever it is that's outflanking. So, the next one is we're going to move on to elites. So, elites, we have Hide Guard, which is that same model I had before. I don't know why people don't use this more often, but the Hive Guard is a great anti-tank unit, great shooting unit. It's 50 points a model, usually only take them in squads of 3. Their gun has a very unique gun that you don't need line of sight and pretty much ignores cover unless you're in area terrain. So it's strength 8, AP 4, not great AP, but for what it does, it's pretty good. Range 24 and assault 2. So their ballistic skill is 4, so they hit on 3s, and they ignore cover unless it's in area terrain. The next elite is the Lictor Brood, 65 points. I used to have a couple of these models in 5th edition. Based on how they read is they do a lot of deep strike stuff, and how they used to be able to assault. They're not very good in 6th unless they get corrected, which they might be. They might get corrected along with Gene Stealers in the new Codex. I had a couple of models. They get in the 1 to 3 lictors. They got hit and run, move through cover, and stealth. So they get a little better extra cover save once they kind of jump into action. And they get +1 to their reserve rolls. And it can be placed within 6 inches. Oh no. And no scattering within 6 inches of them. I mean, it can be helpful, but having one guy on the table that can barely not move very fast, they need to work on them in the new Codex. Death Leaper is the special character of a Lictor. Has 140 points, has a number of different extra options. He takes up an elite spot, which elite spots are pretty much your most important area in the Tyranid Codex. Like the orcs, where you can just have a ton of different troops and heavy support, where more of your troops are where the important stuff is. Elites, I wouldn't take up a space for Death Leaper any day. And he'll just come in, and he can come in within I believe a few inches of an enemy. He has great close combat, but usually he never lives long enough to be in close combat. So I don't like him. And then you have the Venom Thorpe. Which is actually a really good model, first of all. Kind of a pain in the butt on these little tentacles. Once they break off, I might modify it or something, but Venom Thorpes, they're pretty good in the fact that they give you a 5-up cover for any kind of squad within 6 inches. That's the big advantage. They're 55 points, so they're not terribly expensive. I usually take them in squads of 2 so that if they get targeted, and that's the downside, by the way, is that when you get targeted and they die, you'll lose that 5-up cover. So the enemy will waste at least 1 turn or half a turn trying to kill the Venom Thorpes to get rid of that 5-up cover. They're actually surprisingly good in close combat too, and very resilient to people assaulting him. He kind of has like a cloud of poison around him. That's what gives you the cover save, is that you can't quite see through it. Also, when people are assaulting him, they have defensive grenades, and they have to take a dangerous terrain test when going into assault with him. And he also has a 2+ poison attack, so he's actually really good in close combat and really good defensive. That's the only bad thing is that you can target them. They're only toughness 4. You can insta-kill them. You can insta-kill a whole squad of them with like a big blast or something. The only way I could see this working is if you had... Oh, and they have lash whips too, which really helps in close combat. Brings everybody's weapon skill, I believe, down to 1. Or, yeah, that's it. I just don't like the fact that people can target him. So what I've been trying to do is just move up my Turvagon sideways instead of like this. And this way, you can actually have a Venom Thorpe behind him like this, and you'll block line of sight unless you get like an extreme angle or something like that. But just kind of walk him up like this. And hopefully block line of sight for at least 1 or 2 of the Venom Thorps, so they can't just wipe them out altogether. So that's the only way I could really see them be working and being effective in battle. Unless you're playing against somebody that doesn't have a lot of long range. Like Ludas will take them down super fast. Las cannons, melt-a-gun, well that's close. Predator tanks, Tau tanks. So it's only a select few armies that would be good against. So you got to be very careful and use those sparingly. Plus, you don't want to take up an elite choice if you just waste the elite category. And I say if you're going to take an elite choice, might as well max them out. Take 3 of them. Take 2 or 3 of them. Same with the Hive Brood, always 3. 150 points for anti-tank, anti-infantry, and can instant kill a lot of things on the board. So, the next is the Zoanthorpe, which is this little guy. It's actually a pretty big model. This is a heavy psyker. Very good. I have 3 of them. They're still being painted. There's that blue one, there's a green one that's like halfway done, the other one hasn't been started yet. But 60 points, so again, max them out, so 3 of them, so 180 points. Can't upgrade them, you can take them in a spore pod. Depending on the army you play, I would take them in a spore pod. If you're playing somebody that has like a Land Raider, or a Predator that's kind of like castled in the corner, or a Tau tank castled in the corner, or something like that, where it's going to be impossible to get there during the game, I would take a spore pod. Other than that, I would just let them walk across the board. They are a synapse creature, so that's good. They're a psyker. They have Shadow of the Warp, and they have Warp Field, which gives them, I believe, a 3-up invulnerable save. Yeah, so they have a 5-up save, but a 3+ invulnerable. I have yet to use a 5-up save, so 3+ invulnerable is always better. They have Warp Blast and Warp Lance. Now, Warp Lance is really cool, is really good. I believe it's Strength 10, AP 2. Okay, so Warp Blast. They can choose to do either one or the other. I believe all of them have to do the same. Anyways, Warp Blast is Strength 5, AP 3, so Space Marine Killer. Assault 1 Blast, and it's a psychic shooting attack, 24-inch range. Pretty good against maybe like a small little group of Space Marines that are kind of tightly packed together. This is the good one. This is what you would spore pod into to get those bad tanks out of the way. It's Warp Lance. It's 18 inches, Strength 10, AP 1, so I was wrong. So AP 1 instead of AP 2. Assault 1 Lance. So Lance, remember, brings any kind of armor down to 12. So a Land Raider, you get out of the spore pod, you have 3 of these guys shooting Strength 10 AP 1 against armor 12 instead of 14. So on a 2 you glance, and on a 3 you penetrate, and it's +2 the roll. So it's really good. And the ballistic skill's 4. So psychic test, then roll a 3-up to hit, and then a 3-up to penetrate. So that's a big one. I like Zoanthropes, and I plan on using them a lot. So that's a good one. Hey! Okay. The next one is the Doom of Malantai, which is special character Zoanthrope. Still has the 3-up invul, and 100% of the time, you're going to take him in a spore pod. This is the type of character that's extremely dangerous, that needs to get within a few inches of the enemy immediately, or will get gunned down walking across. So the Doom and Malantai, as a lot of you probably seen in many wargaming battle reports, is a great character. It's a Psyker, Shadow the Warp, and Warp Field. So what you do is you drop pod in, and at the beginning of every shooting phase, both your opponent and yours, so if average game goes to, let's say, 6 turns, you have essentially 10 turns, because he goes in a drop pod, you have 10 turns to do damage on your enemy. And any non-vehicle enemy unit within 6 inches of Doom and Malantai does a leadership on a 3d6. Anything over their leadership, like let's say Space Marines leadership 10, they roll a 13. They get 3 wounds against them with no armor saves allowed. So just boom, 3. And then the Doom and Malantai's wounds actually go up by everything, so he's essentially sucking the life out of everything within 6 inches. So, and yes, that's accumulative. So if you land in a group of Chaos Space Marines and you land within 6 inches of their Chosen, 6 inches of their Chaos Space Marines, and 6 inches of their Cultists, you can, like right in the middle, that primo spot, then you can suck the brains out of all of them. And you can max out at 10 wounds. And then immediately, right on his turn, he can do a large blast, 24-inch range, strength of however many wounds he has. So if you land, you suck the brains out of those groups. So he starts with 4 wounds. So if you suck 6 wounds, which is very easily to do, by the way, you can do a strength 10 AP1 large blast immediately once you jump down. And the only thing is that he loses D3 wounds after he does that, but before any additional wounds are absorbed. So on a strength 10 AP1 blast, large blast, anything you kill under there, you get those wounds back. So that's pretty nice. And no saves of any kind, by the way, on that large blast. So he is just a killer. The only downturn to him is that he's instinct behavioral, so he's not a synapse creature. And he can be insta-killed on a Meltagun, strength 8. I hope that in the new book, the new Codex, they're gonna tame him down. I don't know how they're going to tame him down. Maybe limit the how many groups you can do that life leech on. This could have been a glitch or something that kind of got this through, but he's pretty amazing. And the instant death is just the problem. And he's not very expensive. He's only 90 points, so auto include and what is it, 45 point spore pod? That's an auto include. So he's really 135 points. Trying to find out where the spore pod is 40 points. So he's 130 points auto include. Pretty good. And he's an elite. Next is a Pyrovore. Pyrovores, they're like, they have a flame template. Flame spurt. I don't really use them. Strength 5, AP 4, so it's a heavy flamer. Toughness 4, wounds 1. I mean, nothing to, or no, I'm sorry. Toughness 4, wounds 2. Nothing to really write home about, but you can take them in groups of 4. What would be really nice is if you could maybe in the new Codex, could be a torrent weapon or something, kind of bring them back. And he can fire even though he freaks out and runs into with his synapse. He can run into buildings and still use his flame spray. So he's actually a pretty expensive model, and he takes up an elite choice, so I wouldn't take him. The Yum Garls Gene Stealers, they're really expensive. They're 23 points versus the Troop choice of 14. A couple of neat things. These are what Gene Stealers are supposed to be. You pick at the beginning, you pick a form of terrain, and on turn 2 they pop out of the terrain within 1 inch of the enemy and attack them. And they can actually assault when they come in. It specifically says that. Gene Stealers, they used to do the outflank and then assault. Now in 6 they can't do that, so they're pretty much useless. So if you're going to use any Gene Stealers, it's going to be the Yumgar Gene Stealer. They also have one other unique ability, the Alter Form. So they can, every turn you can choose whether you want 1 additional strength, 1 additional attack, or 1 additional to their toughness. And you can't do the same consecutive turns, and everyone in the squad does the same thing. So you can't just have one particular person. So that's a pretty big deal. So especially on that turn 1 where you get the additional attacks, either that or 1 additional strength. They already get 2 attacks, so they get 3 on the charge. Getting 30% more attacks or a better chance to strength, and their strength's already 4. So strength 5, that's a tough one. I don't know. Either, depends, actually, there you go. If it depends, if you're coming out of cover to attack a vehicle or a monstrous creature, you'll probably do the +1 to strength. If you're coming out to hit some yummy group of Space Marines or something like that, I would do additional attacks. And they have Rending Claws too, right? Yes, they do. They have Bone Stock Rending Claws, which is really, really nice. So I have considered, and I probably will be taking those guys. Sadly, because the regular Gene Stealers can't be taken. So those are the elites. In summary, I would, most of the time, I would take 3 Hive Guard for the anti-tank and anti-troop, and I hear that they might actually get Skyfire in the new one, so that's even more so an auto-include. So that would be number 1. You get 3 elite choices. Probably number 2 would be the Zoanthropes. Number 3 would either be the Doom Malantai or the Yumgarl. And actually, it's a 3-way tie, really. I think a 3-way tie between the Doom... Actually, no. Alright. Number 1 would be Hive Brood. Zoanthropes would be number 2. And tied for 3rd would either be a Doom Malantai or the Venom Thorps, depending, the one that gives you 5 up counter, depending on who you're playing against. If it's Orcs, I would go Doom. And then probably 4th, a very close 4th, would be Yumgarl, the Gene Stealers, just for fun, more of a fun thing. Alright, so back on to troops. Remember I said before, you don't want to pay for troops, because they're so garbage for the most part, that you just want to get them free with the Venom Thorps, or the Turvogods. So, the first one on the list is the Warriors. 30 points, and then you start gearing them up from there. They can get pretty expensive. They have 3 wounds, yay. Toughness 4, boo. You can instant death them with most things that are out there now. Meltas and blasts and things like that. They are a synapse creature, which is nice. You can do 3 to 9 of them, but these guys can get crazy expensive. They're decent ballistic skill. Ballistic skill 3 with a 4-up cover. So, this is probably going to be your shooting. I wouldn't spend too many points on him. And remember, if your Tyranid Prime is in a group with them, they use his weapon skill and ballistic skill. So, it's a tough one. I mean, I have about 6 warriors. I'll probably even be using them. I'm not quite sure how I'll kit them out. Maybe rending claws, but they don't move fast enough. I don't know. We'll see. I think I'll most likely keep them shooty. Try to stay away from the Meltas. Then the next one is Gene Stealers. These were my favorite in 5th. When I had my last Tyranid army, I had a lot of Gene Stealers, and these were fantastic. You have like 2 or 3 groups of these guys outflanking, and they don't care about synapse. You outflank, so your attack range on the side was essentially 12 inches on the sides of just destroying everything, because they have 2 attacks on the charge, or 3 attacks on the charge, and they have rending claws, so they can kind of just go through Terminators. They can go through anything. The only time I can see using them now would be to hold an objective and to make sure that you assault out of the cover where the objective is and attacking the person before they attack you. Broodlord. He's a pretty expensive upgrade. He's 46 point upgrade, which is kind of weird point value, 46. But he's a psyker, and you can do biomancy to give him feel no pain, or, you know, add a couple of things. I'm on the fence whether he's worth it or not. I mean, if you got Iron Arm, and you got, you know, he's toughness 5, you get Iron Arm, so he's up to toughness 8, and you put him in the front of the group where you can't even wound him, would be nice. But again, more of an objective holder and attacking each other, and they have infiltrate too. The next troop is the Termagants. Is these little guys. They're kind of, their sole purpose is either die, hold objectives, die, or tie up units in assault. They're 5 points. They're cheap, but not cheap enough. The good news about them is that if you buy 10 of them, so 50 points, you get to take Mr. Turvagon as a troop choice. So you have 2 groups. You have 2 groups, so 100 points, so you have 20 Turvagons, or Termagants, out on the board, and you have 2 Turvagons that spores more troops. You're gonna be looking pretty good for an objective game. You start off with 4 troop choices, and that's not counting if you did a Gene Stealer or a Warrior Brood. And then every turn you're gonna be pumping out more just to sit on objectives and just sit out there. So I would never buy them except for to make a Turvagon or Turvagon a troop choice. Don't give them a single thing. They're worthless, and upgrading them is even more worthless. And adrenal glands and toxin sacs they get from your Turvagon, so there's no point in upgrading them. So that's it. So that's the only time I can use them is in groups of 10. Now, this next one I'm on the fence about. Ormagants. They're pretty much close combat. Or they are close combat. And you can take 10 to 30 of them, and they're pretty good in close combat. They're strength 6, and you either upgrade them with adrenal glands or toxin sacs. I wouldn't do both, or else now you're looking at a pretty expensive unit. They got fleet, move through cover, bounding leap, which helps them run a little better. I hope that would be really nice is that because the new Eldar got that battle tactics or whatever where they can move, shoot, and then run. I wish that these guys would get the move, run, and then assault.